I never thought I'd find myself here, typing out my story for strangers on the internet. But life has a funny way of turning upside down, especially when you least expect it. My name is Jake, and I was married to a woman named Sarah for 7 years. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never imagined I'd be writing about the downfall of my marriage due to an affair. Sarah and I met in college, and we were that couple everyone envied. Our friends would often joke about how perfect we were for each other, but like most relationships, it wasn't always smooth sailing. We had our share of fights, mostly about finances and family planning, but we were good at getting through it, or at least I thought we were. In the past couple of years, my life took an unexpected turn. I was diagnosed with cancer. It was a tough battle, but I fought hard and found a remarkable support group that helped me through my darkest moments. One bright spot was the cancer support group facilitator, Lisa. She was kind, compassionate, and had a way of making everyone feel special. I leaned on her a lot, and I could see that Sarah was growing jealous of the time I spent at the hospital and with Lisa. At first, I didn't think much of it. Cancer brings out the best and worst in people. I figured Sarah was just scared and didn't know how to express it. But then, I started noticing changes in her behavior. She became distant, often buried in her phone, and I caught her rolling her eyes when I tried to talk about my treatment. There was a coldness that hung between us which felt foreign to me. Things really began to spiral when I noticed that she was spending more time out with friends. She'd come home late, and when I asked her about it, she'd brush me off with excuses like, "Oh, we just lost track of time," or "It's not a big deal, Jake." But it was a big deal to me. I was fighting for my life and she was off gallivanting around town. Then one day I got a call from my friend Tom. He mentioned that he saw Sarah with someone at a coffee shop. At first, I didn't think much about it, but then I started connecting the dots. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It gnawed at me like a bad itch I couldn't scratch. The following weekend, I decided to do some digging. I knew it was probably wrong, but I felt like I needed to know the truth. I went through her texts while she was taking a shower, and that's when I stumbled upon a conversation that shattered my world. There it was in black and white, a series of flirtatious messages between Sarah and none other than Lisa, the facilitator from my support group. My heart raced as I read their exchanges, filled with inside jokes, promises to meet up, and explicit mentions of their sexual encounters. It felt like the ground had been pulled from under my feet. I couldn't believe it. The woman I loved, the woman I had shared so much with, was cheating on me with someone I trusted. It was surreal. The moment Sarah stepped out of the bathroom, I confronted her. She looked at me with wide eyes, and for a split second, I thought maybe I would find some semblance of remorse or guilt. But instead, she rolled her eyes again and asked, "What are you talking about?" Like I was the one who was crazy. I laid it all out for her, showing her the texts. My voice trembled with anger and hurt as I asked her how she could betray me like this, especially during such a critical time in my life. Her reaction was infuriating. She laughed it off, saying it was just harmless flirting and that I was overreacting. It felt like I had been blindsided. I expected some sort of defense, maybe an apology or at least a hint of guilt. Instead, she called me drama-prone and insisted I was just being paranoid. She even had the audacity to say, "You're sick, Jake. You're not thinking clearly." At that moment, all those doubts I had harbored over the past months collided into one explosive realization. My wife didn't care. Not about me, not about my struggle, not about our marriage. The emotional fallout was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, hurt, and angry. How could she do this to me? As I stood there, my mind was racing. I had been so focused on fighting cancer, on getting better, that I had completely ignored the signs. Little did I know I was fighting a much different battle, one that would shake the foundation of my life. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to process everything. I was left standing in the living room, alone with the ghosts of our past, wondering how it had all come to this. I never thought I would be in this situation, fighting not only for my life but also for my sanity and dignity. It was a turning point I never saw coming. I knew I had to decide how to move forward from here, but I was lost in a sea of emotions. The betrayal felt like a weight pressing down on me, and I didn't know if I could rise above it. Would I try to salvage our relationship after what she had done? Or was it time to let go and focus on healing in every sense of the word? After the confrontation, my mind was a storm of confusion and anger. I spent the night tossing and turning in bed, replaying every moment, every interaction with Sarah, trying to make sense of it all. It was hard to see her as the woman I had loved and trusted. Instead, she felt like a ghost haunting my memories. I was navigating through layers of betrayal and hurt, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been duped, not just by her, but also by my own blind faith in our marriage. In the days that followed, I tried to act normal, but everything felt different. There was an unspoken tension in the air that thickened with each passing moment we spent together. I was still undergoing treatment, which meant I was physically vulnerable, and yet emotionally I felt stronger than I had in a long time. It was almost ironic. While I was battling cancer, I was also confronting the reality of my marriage. Perhaps that was the silver lining in all of this. I was discovering a strength I didn't know I possessed. At times, I tried talking to Sarah about what had happened. I wanted to understand her mindset, and I thought maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for us to reconcile. I'd ask her questions, and she'd respond with half-hearted excuses and dismissive remarks. "It didn't mean anything," she'd say, brushing it off like it was a simple misunderstanding. The more she spoke, the more infuriated I became. "How can you say it didn't mean anything?" I would ask. Deep down, I wanted her to see the hurt she had caused me, but she remained stubbornly indifferent. Finally, one night, after another pointless conversation where she downplayed her actions, I decided enough was enough. I couldn't keep having these half-hearted discussions that went nowhere. I felt like I was stuck in a loop and I had to break free. I reached out to Lisa, my cancer support group facilitator, not to confront her but to gather evidence. It was time to gather more than just texts. I needed to see if this affair was ongoing. I waited until I knew Sarah would be out with friends again. This time, instead of waiting at home, I headed to the coffee shop where Tom had seen them. I positioned myself at a table in the corner, keeping my head down. The atmosphere was bustling, filled with the aroma of fresh coffee and the chatter of people enjoying their evenings. My stomach churned as I waited, not knowing what to expect. And then I saw them. Sarah and Lisa, sitting together, laughing with the kind of intimacy that made my blood boil. I felt like an outsider watching a scene unfold that I had no part in. They were leaning in close, whispering to each other, sharing something that was exclusively theirs. My heart raced as I pulled out my phone, snapping a few pictures to have undeniable proof of the betrayal. As I sat there, hidden, watching my wife betray me all over again, I felt something shift inside me. I was no longer just a victim of someone else's actions. I was becoming a man ready to reclaim his life. Anger surged through me, but it wasn't just anger. It was a potent mix of determination and resolve. I was tired of being the passive participant in my own life, tired of being the one who always forgave and moved on. Once I had enough evidence, I left the coffee shop, my heart pounding as if I had just outrun a predator. I felt a strange exhilaration mixed with the weight of sadness for what had turned into a nightmare. I made my way home, still processing what I had witnessed, and I knew right then that my next steps were crucial. When I got home, Sarah was already there, still buzzing from what I assumed was a fun night out. I confronted her once more. This time I had proof. I showed her the pictures. Her face went pale, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "You stalked me," she spat, anger flashing across her features. "I wanted to know the truth, Sarah. You think this was just some game?" I replied, my voice rising. "You're cheating on me, and you think I'm just supposed to sit here and accept it." She tried to backpedal, saying that I had misunderstood and that it wasn't serious, but I wasn't having it. I laid it all out for her, the emotional distance I felt, the lies, the betrayal. "You've made your choice, and now it's my turn to make mine," I declared. In that moment, I knew I was done. I didn't want to keep fighting for someone who didn't want to fight for me. My focus had shifted from trying to salvage our marriage to focusing on myself and my healing. I would no longer be the victim of her infidelity. After that confrontation, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. I was still processing the enormity of what had happened, but I felt empowered. I began to think about what my next steps were, whether that meant separation or divorce. I wanted to prioritize my mental health and well-being. In the following days, I sought support from my friends and family. I needed to talk to someone about my situation, and I wasn't going to keep it bottled up anymore. I reached out to Tom and a few other friends who had supported me throughout my cancer journey. They were shocked but rallied around me. I shared everything: my diagnosis, my fight, and now, my wife's betrayal. Their reactions were a mix of sympathy and anger on my behalf. They encouraged me to focus on myself and not feel guilty about wanting to leave the relationship. I was starting to feel a sense of clarity, one that I hadn't felt in a long time. As I navigated through my emotions, I realized that I needed to prioritize my recovery. Cancer had already taken so much from me. I didn't want to let my marriage or the betrayal drag me down any further. I had fought too hard to be in a position where I had to fight for someone who didn't believe in me. With my friends' support, I began to draft a plan for the future. I had to figure out how to put myself first, to reclaim my life after cancer and this shocking betrayal. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face whatever came next. As I sat there in the aftermath of my confrontation with Sarah, my mind began mapping out my future. I realized I couldn't stay rooted in this toxic environment any longer. The betrayal had not only shattered my trust but had also taken a toll on my mental health. I felt like I was living in a constant state of anxiety, where I was unsure about what would happen next. The emotional weight was exhausting. I reached out to my support group, not just for the moral support I had come to appreciate during my treatment, but also for the wisdom I hoped they could share about navigating relationships. Lisa was there, the very person at the center of my turmoil, and while it felt awkward, I knew I had to speak to her about how I was feeling. I wanted to understand how she could betray the trust of someone who was heavily relying on her during one of the most vulnerable times of their life. I scheduled an appointment with her for coffee, and as I walked into the cafe, I felt a mixture of anger and apprehension. What could I possibly say to her? She had crossed a line that I thought was unthinkable, and yet I wanted answers. I needed to know how she justified her actions, especially since I had opened up so much to her during my treatment. When Lisa arrived, she greeted me with a warm smile, but it felt hollow. I could hardly meet her gaze as I sat down. "I'm here to talk about Sarah," I said bluntly, cutting straight to the chase. Lisa's demeanor shifted, her smile fading. "Okay," she replied cautiously, her eyes narrowing as she tried to gauge my emotional state. "I saw you two together," I continued, my heart racing as the words left my mouth. "You and Sarah, how could you do that? I trusted you to help us, and instead you took advantage of that trust." Lisa looked taken aback, and for a moment I thought she might apologize. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms defensively. "It's not what you think, Jake. Yes, I had feelings for Sarah, but it got complicated. She was going through a lot and I was just there for her," she explained, her voice dripping with condescension. "Just there for her." "You call sleeping with someone being there?" I asked incredulously. My anger bubbled to the surface. "You knew I was fighting cancer and you went after my wife. What kind of person does that?" She shrugged, a dismissive gesture that made my skin crawl. "You really think it was like that? It wasn't planned. Things just happened. She's a beautiful woman and I found comfort in her too. You're not the only one with issues, Jake." Her words stung like a slap to the face. I felt a surge of rage, but I managed to maintain some composure. "You don't get to play the victim here, Lisa. You made a choice. You betrayed my trust and you betrayed your role as a support person. What happened to professional boundaries?" Lisa rolled her eyes again, as if my outrage was a burden she didn't want to deal with. "You need to understand that people are complicated. I didn't force Sarah to do anything. She was an adult who made her own choices. You should really be talking to her about this, not me." I pushed back in my chair, feeling both angered and defeated. "I've talked to her. I've confronted her. And you know what? I'm done with both of you. You two deserve each other." As I walked away from that meeting, I felt a mixture of disgust and clarity. Lisa had shown me all I needed to see. She was incapable of taking responsibility for her actions. It reinforced my determination to distance myself from both of them. I needed to focus on my life and my recovery, not on a relationship tainted by betrayal. When I got home, I found Sarah sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, her expression shifting from casual to anxious. As I walked in, "How did it go?" she asked, feigning innocence. "Fine," I said curtly. I wasn't in the mood for games or niceties. "We need to talk." I sat down across from her, my heart racing as I prepared to lay everything on the line. "I met with Lisa," I said, watching her reaction closely. Her eyes widened and the color drained from her face. "And I know everything." Sarah shuffled in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. "Jake, I can explain." "Explain what?" "How you betrayed me. How you got caught up in something that should never have happened. I trusted you, Sarah. I thought we were in this fight together." She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Instead, she looked at me with a mix of fear and defiance. "You don't understand what I was going through," she finally said, her voice shaky. "I was scared. I didn't know how to cope with your illness. I didn't know how to handle the stress. It just happened." I shook my head. "You chose to cheat on me. You didn't choose to talk to me about your fears or worries. You didn't choose to be honest. You chose betrayal." We argued back and forth, and with each word I felt the weight of the relationship lift a little more. The realization struck me. She was not the person I thought she was. It was as if I was watching a house of cards collapse, one layer after another, until all that was left was the cold truth of what our marriage had become. Eventually, I reached a breaking point. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah. I can't keep fighting for a relationship where I'm the only one putting in the effort. I deserve someone who values me, who respects me, especially during a time like this." Her jaw dropped, and for a moment silence filled the room. I watched as realization washed over her face, and I could see the panic set in. "You're serious," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I am. I think it's time for us to separate," I declared. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, but at the same time a profound sadness settled in my chest. This was it, the end of something I had once cherished. I stood up and walked away, leaving her sitting on the couch, stunned and silent. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness wash over me. It was a decision that felt right but still hurt. I still loved the person I thought she was, but I couldn't hold on to the idea of who she used to be. My focus needed to shift toward my own healing, both physically and emotionally. The next steps wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to reclaim my life. I had survived cancer. Now it was time to survive this betrayal and build a new future, one where I could find strength in my independence and the support of true friends. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of purpose driving me forward. The decision to separate from Sarah wasn't just a moment of clarity. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I had spent so long fighting cancer that I was finally ready to fight for my own happiness. I had come to terms with the fact that I wouldn't just be battling physical illness, but also the emotional scars left by betrayal. After our confrontation, I focused on myself, starting with creating a space that felt safe and healing. I moved into a small apartment, one that felt like a fresh start. It was modest, but I loved it. It had big windows that let in natural light and a little balcony that overlooked a park. I could sit there and breathe, feeling the sun on my face and the wind in my hair, taking in the newfound freedom. I filled my new space with things that reminded me of who I was outside of being a husband. I hung up pictures of my friends and family, moments captured in time that made me smile. I began to cook for myself again, experimenting with recipes I had neglected during my marriage. Cooking had always been a passion of mine, and now it felt like a way to reclaim my identity. I started to rediscover small joys that had been overshadowed by the heaviness of my situation. In the weeks after the separation, I leaned heavily on my support group. They had been my lifeline during my cancer treatment, and now they became my rock as I navigated this new terrain. I found solace in sharing my story and my feelings with others facing their own struggles. The vulnerability in these discussions opened up new avenues for healing I hadn't anticipated. During one of our meetings, I found the courage to share my experience with Sarah and Lisa. The group listened intently, providing support and understanding. I was surprised by how many people could relate to my story of infidelity, feeling a sense of camaraderie with others whose lives had been upended by betrayal. We exchanged stories of heartbreak, resilience, and ultimately, regeneration. I started to engage in activities that nurtured my spirit. I took up yoga, feeling the physical release of tension through movement. I began running again, rediscovering the joy of feeling my feet hit the pavement and my heart pumping with life. Through it all, part of me still battled feelings of anger and resentment toward Sarah. I had forgotten how freeing it was to let go of toxic emotions. I found myself writing in a journal, pouring my heart out onto the pages, allowing the ink to absorb my pain. It became a cathartic outlet, a way to process my feelings without the weight of judgment. One evening, after a particularly emotional day, I sat down at my kitchen table and picked up a pen. "Dear Sarah," I began, and the words flowed out in a torrent. I expressed my hurt, anger, and confusion, but I also included moments of gratitude for the good times we had shared. Writing that letter didn't mean I intended to send it. It was a way to release the emotions I had been holding onto. Once I finished, I felt lighter, as if I had unburdened my soul. As I continued to adjust to my new life, I began to see a therapist. I wanted to unpack the emotional baggage I was carrying and find constructive ways to cope with the scars left by betrayal. I approached therapy with an open heart, willing to confront the messiness of my feelings. It was liberating to delve into my past, exploring how my relationship with Sarah had shaped me, both positively and negatively. Slowly, my healing journey transformed me. I became more self-aware and resilient. I learned that my worth wasn't tied to my relationship status or how someone else perceived me. I began to embrace my individuality, realizing that I could define myself on my own terms. But life threw me another curveball one fateful evening. I had gone out with friends for dinner and drinks, seeking a break from the weight of my emotional baggage. We laughed, reminisced, and supported each other through our struggles. It felt good to be around people who genuinely cared for me and wanted to share in my healing. As the night wore on, we decided to head to a bar nearby for some live music. As we walked in, I felt a buzz of excitement in the air. It was a vibrant atmosphere, filled with laughter and the sounds of live guitar riffs. I found a spot near the stage while my friends grabbed drinks. As I leaned against the bar, my eyes scanned the crowd, and that's when I spotted her. Sarah was there, sitting with a group of people, her laughter echoing through the room. A mix of emotions washed over me: surprise, anger, sadness, and something I couldn't quite identify. I hadn't seen her since our separation, and the shock of seeing her brought back all those feelings I had been working so hard to process. I felt my pulse quicken, and I turned to my friends, who noticed my reaction. "You okay?" one of them asked, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine," I replied, but I was anything but fine. I couldn't shake the feeling of being caught off guard. I thought I was done with her, yet here she was, reminding me of everything I had tried to leave behind. I made the decision to stay for a little longer, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in my chest. My friends were oblivious to my internal struggle, engrossed in the music and each other's company. I tried to focus on the performance, but every chord struck sent me deeper into my thoughts. As the set ended, I felt a tug of curiosity and dread. What would I say if she approached me? Could I maintain my composure? Moments later, as if the universe was testing me, Sarah spotted me. She walked over, her expression unreadable. "Jake," she said, her voice shaky. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah, well, it's a free world," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. I could feel my friend's eyes on us, knowing they could sense the tension. "I've been thinking about you," she said, her voice softening. "About us." My heart raced. "What do you want, Sarah?" I asked, the hurt resurfacing like a tidal wave. "I can't keep doing this." "I just wanted to apologize," she said, her eyes searching mine for any sign of softness. "I know I messed up. I was confused and scared, and I didn't handle it well. I wish I could take it back." I felt the anger start to boil again. "You can't just say you're sorry and expect everything to be okay. "You shattered my trust, Sarah. You broke us." "I know," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I've been going to therapy too. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. I was lost without you." Looking at her, I felt a pang of sympathy amid my anger. I had once loved this woman deeply, but that love had been tainted by betrayal. Despite her remorse, I wasn't ready to open that door again. "I'm glad you're seeking help," I said, my voice steady. "But I need you to understand that I'm moving on. I'm trying to heal, and I can't do that in the shadow of our past." Her face fell, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope that maybe she would understand. "Jake, I want to work on things. I miss you," she pleaded. "I miss the person I thought you were, not the one who betrayed me," I replied firmly. "We can't go back to what we had. It's over." With that, I turned away, rejoining my friends who had been watching the exchange with bated breath. As I walked away, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness wash over me. This encounter had brought back memories I thought I had buried, but it also reinforced my resolve to move forward. That night, I reflected on the conversation. It was a reminder that healing isn't linear. There would be moments of regression, unexpected encounters that would shake my foundation. But I was learning to navigate the waves of my emotions, to stand firm in my decisions. As I fell asleep that night, I felt a sense of peace settle in. I was healing, and though the journey was fraught with challenges, I was ready to face whatever came next. I was reclaiming my life, one step at a time. The weeks turned into months as I continued to navigate this complicated journey of healing and self-discovery. My life had transformed significantly since separating from Sarah. I was gradually shedding the weight of the past and embracing the freedom that came with it. I felt like I was reclaiming my identity, piece by piece. My commitment to my therapy sessions paid off. Each week, I poured out my thoughts and feelings, learning to understand my reactions and emotions. I was digging deeper into my past, examining the patterns that had led me to tolerate Sarah's betrayal and the toxic elements of our relationship. It was a painful but necessary process. I was beginning to view my life through a lens of empowerment rather than victimhood. I also found new hobbies that brought me joy. I enrolled in a cooking class, something I had always wanted to try. There, I discovered a community of like-minded individuals, all eager to learn and share their culinary experiences. The classes became a sanctuary for me, a place where I could lose myself in flavors and techniques, where the only focus was creativity and the joy of cooking. One evening, after a particularly exhilarating cooking session, I found myself chatting with a fellow student named Maya. She had a bright smile and an infectious laugh that drew me in. We bonded over our shared love for food, and as the weeks went by, we began to spend more time together outside of class. It felt different, refreshing. I hadn't felt that spark in a long time, and I was beginning to realize that I was capable of opening my heart again. Maya was supportive and understanding of my situation, having her own experiences with heartbreak. We would share stories over dinner, trading tales of past relationships and lessons learned. She never pressured me, respecting the emotional turbulence I was still navigating. It was a welcome change from the chaos I had endured with Sarah. But as my feelings for Maya grew, so did the occasional pang of guilt. I didn't want to rush into anything before I was ready. It was hard to shake the fear that I might be making a mistake, that I could potentially hurt someone else while I was still in the process of healing. I shared these concerns with my therapist, who reminded me that it was okay to pursue happiness again. Healing didn't mean shutting myself off from future connections. It meant being mindful and ensuring I was ready to embrace new love. As I began to open up more to Maya, I felt a sense of excitement that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I looked forward to our cooking sessions together, where we would laugh and experiment in the kitchen. One evening, as we prepared a new dish together, I felt a warmth spread through me, something akin to hope. I realized how much I had missed the simple joys of connection, and it felt good to lean into that. But as fate would have it, life had one more twist awaiting me. One Saturday afternoon, I was at the park, enjoying a sunny day and a book I had been meaning to read. I was sitting on a bench when I noticed Sarah walking towards me, hand in hand with Lisa. My heart sank. the familiar feelings of anger and betrayal bubbling back to the surface. I tried to remain calm as they approached, my mind racing. What was she doing with her? Weren't they supposed to be just friends? I didn't want to confront them, but it felt as though the universe was pulling me into another confrontation I was not prepared for. "Jake," Sarah said, her voice tentative as she spotted me. She stopped, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "What do you want, Sarah?" I replied, my tone betraying my frustration. "Can we talk?" she asked, glancing at Lisa, who stood silently beside her. "Just for a minute." I considered my options. I had a choice. I could walk away, keeping the distance I had worked so hard to establish, or I could engage. Something in me compelled me to hear her out, though I was bracing myself for whatever came next. "Fine," I said, my voice steady but laced with tension. I gestured for them to sit on a nearby bench. "What is it?" There was a moment of silence as Sarah gathered her thoughts. Then she spoke, her voice shaky. "I wanted to apologize again. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'm truly sorry." I crossed my arms, not wanting to give her an inch. I was done with empty apologies. "You've already said sorry, Sarah. How do you expect me to believe you this time?" I know," she rushed out, desperation creeping into her voice. "I'm working on myself. I've been in therapy, and I've realized how much I took for granted. I've been thinking about our relationship and what we had, and I want to make amends." "Make amends?" I scoffed. "You think we can just go back to how it was? You can't just erase the pain you caused me." "I don't want to go back," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "I just want to move forward as friends, to show you that I've changed. I've been talking to Lisa about everything." The mention of Lisa made my heart race with anger again. "So you're still with her? You're still lying?" "No, it's not like that," she said, her voice rising. "We're trying to figure things out too. I promise I'm not using this as an excuse." I looked at Lisa, who seemed to be waiting for something. I was taken aback by the emotions swirling inside me, anger, confusion, and a hint of sympathy, but I couldn't let them cloud my judgment. "You have no idea how much you've hurt me. I trusted you both. Now all I want is to focus on my own healing and my own happiness." "Please, Jake," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "I can't change the past, but I can try to be better. I miss you." The words hit me harder than I anticipated. I felt a pang of sympathy, a flicker of the love I once had for her, but I quickly pushed it away. "I'm sorry, Sarah. You don't get to say you miss me after everything. I've moved on, and I'm finally at a place where I'm healing. I can't jeopardize that." Sarah looked defeated, and for a moment I thought she might cry. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I simply couldn't afford to go back to the pain. I stood up, ready to walk away, when Lisa spoke up. "Jake," she said, her tone steady, "I know this is all incredibly difficult, and I want you to know that I regret what happened. I was wrong to get involved with Sarah, and I've been trying to work through my mistakes too." I turned to her, frustration boiling within. "You think regret is enough? You don't get to play the victim here either. You both hurt me in ways I can't explain." "I understand," she replied, her voice sincere. "I just want to acknowledge the pain we've caused. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive us someday, even if it's a long way off." Their words hung in the air, and for a brief moment I considered whether forgiveness was a possibility, but I quickly shook off the thought. "I appreciate you saying that, but it doesn't change what happened. I need to prioritize myself now, my health, my happiness." With a heavy heart, I walked away from them, feeling a mix of anger and relief. I had stood my ground, reaffirming my commitment to healing. As I exited the park, I took a deep breath, allowing the fresh air to fill my lungs. I had faced my past head-on today, and while it was uncomfortable, it reinforced the steps I had taken to reclaim my life. The road ahead was still long, but I was ready to keep moving forward. I could feel the sun shining brighter, illuminating my path toward a healthier future, one where I could embrace the possibilities that lay ahead, without the shadows of betrayal lurking behind me. Later that evening, as I sat on my balcony, sipping on a cup of tea and reflecting on the day, I knew I had made the right decision. I was ready to close that chapter with Sarah and Lisa, fully embracing the new adventures awaiting me, and it felt liberating. I was learning to love myself again, and that was a journey worth pursuing. The encounter with Sarah and Lisa had marked a pivotal moment in my journey, but I knew it wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter. I felt a renewed sense of determination to keep moving forward. The weeks that followed were filled with growth, self-discovery, and moments of clarity that I hadn't anticipated. As I continued to nurture my relationship with Maya, I found myself opening up more than I had thought possible. What began as a friendship grew into something more profound, blossoming in the warmth of shared experiences. We spent evenings cooking together, exploring new recipes and having deep conversations about life, love, and everything in between. I felt a sense of ease with her that I hadn't felt in years, and it was refreshing. One night, while we were preparing a homemade pasta dish, Maya reached for my hand, stopping me mid-sentence. "You know, Jake, I admire how much you've grown through everything. You've faced so much, yet you're still willing to embrace new experiences. It's inspiring." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had spent so long questioning my worth, feeling the weight of betrayal and worrying about the past that I had forgotten how to embrace the present. "Thank you, Maya," I replied, a hint of vulnerability seeping into my voice. "I've learned that healing is a journey, and I'm finally learning to prioritize myself." That moment felt monumental. I realized how far I had come since my diagnosis and the devastation of betrayal. I had transformed from a man grappling with pain into someone who was actively reclaiming joy, love, and life. As time went on, I gradually started sharing parts of my story with Maya, bits and pieces of my past, the struggles I faced with cancer, and the heartbreak that followed. Each conversation deepened our connection, and every shared experience made me feel more secure in my decision to open my heart again. On one particularly beautiful evening, we decided to go for a walk in the park where I had faced Sarah and Lisa. I felt a sense of nostalgia mixed with newfound strength as we strolled hand in hand, enjoying the gentle evening breeze. We found a quiet spot on a bench, and I took a moment to reflect on how far I had come. "Maya," I said, turning to her with sincerity in my eyes, "I just want you to know how much this means to me. You've shown me kindness and understanding that I desperately needed. Being with you feels different, and I don't want to rush things, but I'm genuinely excited about where this is going." She smiled, her eyes lighting up with warmth. "I feel the same way, Jake. You deserve happiness, and I want to be a part of that journey with you." Her words resonated within me, and in that moment I felt a surge of hope. I wasn't just moving on from my past, I was actively building a future filled with possibilities. Through all of this, I also became more connected to my support group. I started volunteering to facilitate sessions, sharing my journey with others who were battling cancer. It felt empowering to give back to a community that had supported me when I needed it most. I found purpose in helping others navigate their struggles, and it reinforced my own healing. As the seasons changed, I found myself looking forward to what each day would bring. I had learned to embrace my emotions, to sit with the discomfort, and to recognize the importance of self-love. I realized that it wasn't about forgetting my past, but rather learning from it and allowing it to shape me into a better version of myself. One day, as I was preparing to meet Maya for dinner, I stumbled upon the letter I had written to Sarah long ago. I opened it and read through the pages. It reflected all the pain, anger, and confusion I had felt, but it also represented a point in my life where I had decided to take charge. I smiled, realizing how much I had grown since then. I had learned to let go of the bitterness and resentment, allowing space for new love and healing. In that moment, I made a decision. I carefully folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. I wasn't going to burn it or throw it away. Instead, I was going to keep it as a reminder of my strength. It symbolized the journey I had taken from heartbreak to healing. Later that evening, as I sat across from Maya in our favorite restaurant, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and conversation, and I focused on the woman sitting in front of me, genuinely enjoying her company. I had learned to appreciate the little things, the moments that made life beautiful. As we shared a dessert, I looked into her eyes, filled with warmth and understanding. "Maya," I said softly, "thank you for being a part of my life. I'm excited to see where this journey takes us." She smiled, her eyes sparkling with sincerity. "Me too, Jake. We'll take it one step at a time. In that moment, I understood that life is full of unexpected twists and turns. I had faced my share of challenges, but they had shaped me into a stronger person. I was no longer defined by my past. I was forging a future filled with love, joy, and possibilities. As we clinked our glasses together, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I had survived cancer, endured betrayal, and emerged from the ashes, ready to embrace the life that lay ahead. I was healing, I was growing, and above all, I was ready to love again. It was a journey worth taking, and I was finally at peace with my path.